Hey guys, I'm Chris.
I'm Michael.
With PDQ.com.
Not Shane.
Not Shane, it's true. Welcome to the show with not Shane today, although we might call it out more than you may care to listen to. But it's okay. Join us. Yeah, we've got a good show today, I think.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be exciting stuff.
It is.
Dev.
Deep. Dive. Scuba. You know, all the fun stuff. So anyway, we're going to, dive in.
All right. So this is a first for us. I'm Michael, the development manager here at PDQ, and we're going to do a deep dive. And this is kind of a first as far as gauge your interest of whether this is a topic that you want to learn about and know about here. And we want to kind of make our operations more transparent to you. So do give us feedback as to whether you think this is a good topic or not.
Yes, as Kelly mentioned, this is how the sausage is made. So we want to know if we can continue making sausage and showing it to you. Yay, it's exciting. I have my own 5-pound vertical sausage stuffer.
Great way to put it.
I'm big into cooking, sorry. This is just a near and dear topic to my heart. I'm so excited.
All right, and with that, we will move on. So what topics are we going to cover? We're going to talk about how we build, test, and publish deploy and inventory. We're going to cover how we decide on features that go into the product, which is probably going to be an awesome topic for a lot of you. And we're going to talk about our future goals for development. And without further ado, let's go ahead and move on. Yay. So first of all, what is a build process? Let's cover the basics first. So in its really simplest sense, we take source code, we compile it, we test it, and then we publish it out to you. And that's the simplest explanation that we could come up with, but that's what we're going to be covering. Now, obviously, there's more to it, and here we've got some other kind of purposes of the actual build process, or what we call the pipeline, in which we generate, deploy, and inventory. And I don't want to overstate this, but this is really important for us in ensuring that we're producing fast and quality software. It's really how the sausage is made, but we do a lot of introspection and analysis in this process to make sure that we're doing the right stuff in the most efficient way.
It's true. And for those of you like me, when you say pipeline, we don't mean a physical pipeline. We don't have physical pipes other than carrying water and stuff. We're talking about making stuff more standardized to get more better code out to you.
Yeah. Though our existing pipeline was kind of like a pipe in the water sense. Yep. We built our own custom pipeline over the years, and it started to kind of look like this stuff, where we had all sorts of black boxes, patching work, various things, and when we needed to try to fix it or extend it, we were pretty much like this guy. It was miserable. And we really needed to take a step back, look at how we were doing this, and understand where we could improve it on a broader sense. So we did that analysis, and we came up with the kind of problem areas. Here you can see our existing pipeline, and what you'll see is that we had this merge hell at the first part. We were trying to move changes back and forth between these branches in order to maintain all of these different releases. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. But then we went on into the big black box of Project Manager, which would compile and build our products, and it would store off some of that build information into a database. So that database was acting as a communication layer. And if you know anything about software architecting and such, you never want to use a storage as a communication layer. And then we had some other pieces where we had tightly coupling of services, where services were doing multiple things. There was no separation of concerns. And it was really hard to understand what was actually going into the product in the end state, which makes it very hard to ensure the quality and also just the transparency of all of the things that are going in.
Right, not knowing what's going on, where it's going on, and I mean, you might not see this, but this is kind of how I see this. There's, question mark there. Oh, nope, I'm doing things great. So question mark there, question mark there.
Tons of question marks.
And,
we were just trying to understand what was going on. Hey, there you go. So let's talk about merge hell. Literally, we had merge conflicts everywhere.
That's true.
So we would make a change, let's say in a branch in TFS, and then we would try to carry those changes through multiple other branches. And by the end of it, we had this highly divergent change history, and it was really hard to understand what was going on. And what we were trying to do is provide that reverse compatibility and supporting of many different versions. But what we were doing was we were pandering to largely the 20% of our customer base rather than the 80%. And we decided, it's better for us to understand exactly what's going into this product and control it more effectively so that we could provide something fast and high quality rather than trying to do all of this manipulation. In fact, this actual merge hell is what caused the delays in our previous releases. We wanted to get on a 6-week release cycle, and we just couldn't. We would run up against integration problems, or we would just be ready to deploy, and then there'd be this critical problem, and it turned out it was because of a change that happened in the merging process. So it was just a real nightmare. Let's see. So we took a step back and we said, well, if we could change this, what would be our objectives? And we came out with this list. And it's a pretty sizable list. I'm not going to read all of this, but the short of it is it's all about that control around the source control, the source control.
Words are hard.
Source code. There we go. And getting it out, but also making those changes more transparent and kind of changing how we were doing actually our development itself. So what did that look like in the end? Well, here we have our new pipeline, and hopefully you can see it's streamlined down. We have still some of these little boxes, but we know what's in those boxes. And particularly, I want to point out this area here, the main line. Basically, what this is representing is a change in how we were doing our branching, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. You also see that we really trimmed down a lot of the moving parts in this, trying to simplify.
That's really important part of this because, this is smaller than the previous screen, if you recall. Probably don't. That's okay. You can watch it after the fact. But this is also far easier to understand since this is all built from the ground up as transparent, as Michael says. And that is kind of key. Transparent to us makes better transparency for you. Like this is a big deal, folks.
Yep. So, click here. All right, so let's talk about that branching model bit that I mentioned before. So what we adopted was what's called GitHubFlow. And I'm just going to really simplify this down. It's a little more complex than this, but you can imagine that master is the source of truth. That's where all of the integration is happening, and we build off of that. And so when we wanted to develop a new feature or a bug fix, because it does happen.
Those never happen.
Oh, no, it does.
No.
But what we would do is we would branch then, do those changes, and we would keep it in sync with master. And then what we would do is we'd have a pull request. And this is where we would do our peer review. We would check our code craft. We'd look for unit testing, ensure the automated testing is working, different things like that. Essentially building quality in to the process. And then once that passes the muster, we would merge it into master.
Yeah, and at that point, any build that we make off master is releasable to you folks.
Yeah. So along those lines, if we look at master as kind of a timeline, you can see here that we have a release 18 as an example, and that's just like a point in time on the master that we happen to release a public build. At the end of every sprint, hence EOS, what we would do is we'd make a build, and that will be the beta. And we would emit that out to our beta program. And then again, EOS, another sprint, and another build, onward, and until we got to a point where effectively these betas are release candidates, we say, this one's a good one, we'll release that out to you guys. And that's how we would produce the build. Now, you'll see that we have this nightly, and what that represents is that every 24 hours, we will make a build, and this is effectively a custom build that contains any particular fixes to address customer tickets. And we will send that off to customers who maybe have a pending ticket that we think this fix addresses their issue. We'll get that feedback, yeah, that fixed it, or no, it didn't. And we'll progressively do these nightly builds on a regular basis so that we can address your immediate concerns, but we are also not making discrete builds per ticket, which was actually what we were doing prior, and that was a nightmare. In a given release cycle like this, we might have 150 builds, and just keeping track of all that was going into those builds was a mess. And so what we did was we consolidated that down. So the nightly is going to contain some, a number of fixes. And if you really want to be on the bleeding edge, sort of thing, you could use that. Well, but we don't recommend that in production environment, nor the betas. This would have the latest stuff that we're developing.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty significant change. I mean, like we're talking about, these custom builds that we used to have, if you've ever written into our support and worked with our solutions team, you may have had an issue that we corrected, worked with the developers, got a fix for you. At that point in time, when we were making builds, it was divergent from the rest of the code base. And when he's talking about up to 150 different builds, spiderwebs just kind of expanding out and out, and you can quickly come to realize when we talk about merge conflicts and merge issues, it was a nightmare. And so to have this basically say, even nightlies, we're all releasing from this same main line here, it's a huge deal for us and for you.
Yeah. So along those lines, what about the beta?
How can I be a beta tester?
I want to be a beta tester. Please pick me. Sort of thing. So we really would love for you to be a beta tester. And provide some feedback into these features. We're going to touch on this more, but we're really trying to up our game in getting feedback and understanding where your pain points are. We want to reduce your toil, and so the more information that we have around what's wrong with this, or what problems you're trying to solve, the better. And so along those lines, you can sign up to be a beta tester.
Yay! I want to show you how to do this within the application. So I'm going to pull up PDQ Deploy here. You may have seen something similar in the preferences before, up here in the options menu. In the alerts section here, we changed this up quite a bit. So we have these channels now. So we have the release channel and the beta channel. Right now it's set to release channel, but say you wanted to receive the beta updates as opposed to the release updates. It's as simple as clicky clicky, other clicky, done. Ta-da! It's magic.
Now, one thing, don't do this in your production environment unless you know what you're doing, right? Because the beta does have less rigor around its testing than the actual public release,
yes,
obviously. And likewise, the nightly is even less along those lines. Now, it does go through unit testing, automated testing, all this sort of thing, but we're just not going to put our stamp of approval on that for production.
Yes.
Also to note, do fill out this beta form that we have right here.
Oh.
Yep.
I can't see.
Yeah, no problem. Because that will help us to put you into a newsletter that's going to specifically have the information about what's changed in the beta. And along those lines, though, you can do what Chris circled, email us. Now, what we're looking for in that regard is specific feedback around the beta. We're not looking for feature requests in this channel. It's more about, hey, did this work? Is there an issue with this? Maybe specifically to features that are in the beta, but this isn't a channel for like, oh, I would love this new thing. There are other means of getting that information to us.
That was a great voice for the record. But yes, no, seriously, if you're deploying something from PDQ Deploy with a new feature and your computer starts on fire, although I think unrelated, I kind of want to know about it. So
yeah, I do too.
Yeah,
because that's pretty amazing coding right there, and I want to pat that guy in the back.
Oh yeah.
So
want to harness that technology.
So what does our pipeline look like now? Let's get a little bit more detailed. As you can see, there's a lot that goes into making deploy an inventory. Here's all of the steps, and I want you to note how some of these steps are stacked like this. What that means is that those are happening in parallel. What we're trying to do is address the scalability of our build process itself. Right? And we reduced the time to build, which means faster development cycles, which means faster output to you. It's all about agility.
It is. And I want to point something out here when we were just looking at that set here. You may have realized recently that we're not just releasing PDQ inventory and then releasing PDQ deploy. Notice here, deploy, here's my arrow, and inventory. They're both happening at the same time. This is why we're doing simultaneous release, or not this is why we're doing it, but we are doing simultaneous releases, and here's how we're doing that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Chris, because we were doing this, deploy release, inventory release, deploy release, inventory release, and that was somewhat arbitrary. And what we determined is really deploy and inventory work best together, right?
True.
Duh. So what we decided is we would release deploy and inventory at the same time every cycle. What this means is that if we fix things in inventory, we don't have to wait just an arbitrary time frame for you to get that fix, right? We will put new features into deploy and inventory, and that will be less coupled as it is because we can put new features in both. Hey, who would have thought?
I know, 2 for 1.
Wow, that's amazing. Another thing that I want to call out in this is that we have this anyone can submit a PR. We have some really talented folks that are outside of the development proper that we wanted to open up to, hey, you can contribute. So what we did was we adopted an internal open source approach. Where anyone, from automation to solutions to heck, Kelly could submit a PR into the code.
I want to see this.
Kelly.
I just watched his reaction. It was a bit of a mix between perplexed and perhaps terrified.
It might not actually get approved, but hey,
that's the thing, right? We still have our quality checks,
yes.
But. We want to really open that up, and that may be a precursor to some neat things in the future. So, let's talk about what this means to you, because that's what it boils down to, right? We were, in this, you've probably seen this triangle before, over on that red side, that red dot. We had built this custom build system. It cost us arguably nothing, but it was not the fastest and not the best. And so we wanted to move to that green dot. What that means is we wanted to have a higher quality, faster publishing of features and bugs for you so that you are getting the value out of the software.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not going to read all of this stuff, but it really boiled down to how can we get our organization to take in a feature idea and deliver it in the shortest time frame. That is organizational agility. And we're working hard to get that time frame as short as possible without sacrificing quality.
Yeah, that's kind of again, I keep saying that's kind of a big deal. Like I've probably said it like 3 or 4 times this time, but it really is. This whole thing that we're doing, the whole introspection, go sitting in the corner with the cap on thinking, now what have I done, is all catered around providing you, the customer, me, the customer, Michael, the customer here, the best experience that we can give you. Like we want to do that. We want to give you the quality software, the most quality software. We want to give you the bestest that you can get for the money. Yeah. And this whole thing's built around that. I want you to realize that. So when I say, this is the best thing ever, I believe that. So
yeah, and we're super excited, and it doesn't just involve the pipeline in this regard. We've done a ton of changes under the hood.
Oh yeah.
We have effectively restructured our company. We realigned our groups around value streams that ensure we're producing business outcomes that are going to be desirable for you. We established cross-functional delivery teams. We adopted an agile practice. Of course, that's such the catchphrase, right?
Oh yeah.
But the thing is about agile doesn't solve your problems. It just reveals them.
I love that, by the way.
Holy cow, we had a lot of problems.
Sure did.
We identified, we needed to change our tooling. We needed to also change how we were interacting as individuals, how we were working together. Collaboration is huge for us. It's one of our core values, and we needed to just kind of take a step back and say, hey, we say these things, but how are we applying them? And so we threw out the standard cookbook, and we started from scratch. And some key things along those lines is, we really looked at stuff like ephemeral test virtual machines.
Oh man, this is something that is fantastic. So kind of going off on this, we've kind of taken what we do for testing and kind of turned it upside down and kind of changed quite a bit. For those who've been around the block here with testing here at PDQ.com, they can speak to this, that we're changing significantly. One of the biggest things we've done recently is essentially create this environment, or we're in the process of creating this environment rather, to make it so that whenever we're doing pull requests and we're doing stuff in this pipeline we're talking about, we're spinning up dynamically these virtual machines, running tests on them, and then destroying them at will from orbit. It's fantastic. It's also faster. It is guaranteeing that there's no drift in change on these given long-standing virtual machines. I mean, this is amazing. I'm getting passionate about this. This is exciting.
Yeah, and it just represents some of the cutting-edge stuff that we are trying to do. Also, things like containerization and whatnot, which we're not going to get into too much here, but. Obviously, if you find this stuff interesting, it could be a topic for an upcoming webcast in the future. I do want to point out another bit here is user-centered design. So we really wanted to change how we were making decisions about what went into deploy and inventory. And I want to talk about that in more detail in the sense of, how we're deciding our features. First of all, I forgot about this slide. Oh,
good.
My segue just fell apart. Oh man,
it's true, but it's okay because we have pipes that lead from one segue to the other.
Man, that was so good. All right, so let's talk about the business, the build outcomes first, and then I'm going to talk about new features. So, it's really about the proof is in the pudding sort of thing. How did the build process help? Definitely want to compare where we were with where we are now. We were really struggling with getting those builds out, as I mentioned, and also how much was going into any given build. What we wanted to do was shrink the time to get a build out, but also, and it's seemingly impossible, increase the number of things that went into it.
Gasp.
But it's all about operational efficiencies. And so what we started to see, and hopefully you're going to see more and more, is that we're going to get to that 6-week cycle, and we're also still going to provide you the maximum value in that build, right? And we can already start seeing that manifest in just this short time. We're hopeful that come next quarter or so, you're just going to be delighted, right? And let's talk about features.
Yay.
So there's my segue into it. So how did we decide features in the past? Well,
I think it was more like horseshoes. You kind of toss stuff around.
Yeah, I mean, like these arrows here that represent, this was our decision-making process in a nutshell, right? Shane often talks about how you would walk around the parking lot and just kind of talk to developers and such, and they would kind of intuit what you needed, right? And based upon his knowledge and everything along those lines. And we weren't really coupling that with necessarily evidence, but hey, man, Shane's intuition is dang good, right? But that really isn't a fully sustainable model, nor was it taking advantage of all of the information that we were getting. So I want to erase that. So something to note here is we were doing some analysis. We would evaluate features that were coming in from you or from internal staff, and we were measuring it. But this was kind of maybe just like a dart, more somewhat like the horseshoes, but I guess a little bit more accurate, but still,
We drink some scotch, put on a blindfold, and just kind of be like, thunk. Did it hit it? Yes.
Yeah, and then what we would do is we would define the specifications around the feature, and this was fairly heavy. But hey, it was how everything was being done, and we wanted to change that. So we opted for a more evidence-based approach. We changed all of the phases, right? All the things. We started doing more and more surveys, interviews, and hey, I want to speak about interviews. We would love to come to your location with our developers and interview you.
My location?
Yes, your location.
goodness.
Because the more we understand about what your problems are, the toil that you've got, and things along those lines, then we can solve it.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in that, definitely contact us. We would love to have the opportunity to see your environment. We also did things like cost of delay, where we actually took those measures that I mentioned previously, and we used that to drive our decision-making process. We executed a lightweight design approach, prototyping, UX experimentation, and then we fed all of that back up into the whole process. And as you can see, we drove intuition and evidence together to make those decisions. All right.
You might not notice this, but the evidence arrow's on top of intuition because, we're using evidence
Yes.
on top of intuition.
So what does that mean for the near term? I'm just going to pose the near term. Don't, as the magician doesn't reveal all of the secrets. What does it mean? Well, it means in the short term, we want to reduce the defects and improve the performance and quality. We hear you. We want to make deploy and inventory just a breeze, a delight to use, right? And along those lines, we, as we mentioned, testing at scale. We wanted to be able to kind of emulate your environments, which is a tall order because it's pretty divergent. And then we really wanted to focus on that customer toil and analysis. We want to really understand all of the problems that you are dealing with because we feel like we can help. And the more we know, well, how's that G.I. Joe thing go? Knowing is half the battle.
Yes.
Hey, I remember.
G.I. Joe.
All right. So let's recap. We opted to change our entire pipeline. And this allows us to be faster and deliver more value to you. We changed our company as a whole, and we are, I would say, happier for it.
Oh, absolutely. The changes that have happened have been black and white. We can go talk to some random employee and say, so I know there's been a lot of change, but how is it? And people that I work closely with have said, it was kind of rough at times, but so very different the place we're at now than we were even 6 months ago.
It's hard to imagine that we could actually make it even better,
I
but
know.
we did.
It's fantastic with the super pipeline.
So, and then finally, we really focus in on our mission: eliminate your toil. Right? We want to make the products that are for you and that are going to be again a delight to use. So we hope that you see these changes and manifest in the software and in the touch points that you interact with us. Again, we want to hear from you. We're going to be reaching out to you more and more as we do some more experimentation. We establish hypotheses and then we try to validate them. We're really taking a data-driven, evidence-based approach so that we don't get blindsided by, as much as our intuition is good, sometimes we make mistakes, right?
I get indigestion, my intuition just not feeling good that day.
Yeah. And we want to know that we made mistakes and then learn from it and move on, right?
Absolutely.
So with that, we're done.
Oh my goodness. Hey, are there any questions? I don't know that we've had questions at all today, but...
Oh, yes.
Oh my
It
goodness.
is time for the speed round. Dear Chris and Michael, does PDQ software undergo regular code audits from independent security companies? Sincerely, A. Mouse.
That's awesome. So I love the question. Yes, we are actually working with MSSP. Organizations, and we're kind of revamping how we're doing that security audit. We have a internal security officer along these lines, but we are actually taking a step back in light of some of these changes and saying, hey, how is our security in this? We're also looking at things like code analysis for code smells. You may have heard of things like SonarQube and these sorts of tools that help identify areas where there may be weaknesses. And we're also constantly learning and improving. That's also one of our core values. So, for instance, we're sending a gaggle of people to KubeCon, which is coming up in San Diego. So if you're in San Diego at KubeCon, come see us. But we're going to be learning about Kubernetes and different things along those lines. We are constantly sending different people to different events to learn so that we can make sure that we're providing quality software.
It's true. And I just want to say, a mouse, a nani mouse, that makes me happy. Sorry.
Dear Chris and Michael, does PDQ scan all packages with a service such as VirusTotal prior to adding them to the package library? Sincerely, Annie Muss.
I can answer this. Thank you. That is a great question. But I'm going to say, hey, Colby over there, who's been quiet today, would you like to take this?
I'm actually no longer on the publishing team, but back when I was, yes, we do. We have many different security steps in the packaging and publishing process, and scanning them with VirusTotal is just one of many.
It's true. And just so you know, we take the results very seriously because sometimes we'll have one-off hits on VirusTotals. So that we have to investigate further, or that we know certain things are always going to trigger it. Back when applications used to include the ask toolbar or whatever, and we're saying don't install it with our package, but it's still actually bundled there within the executable himself if they don't have a thin client, or a thin installer. But yeah, we are pretty thorough with those. So good question.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great, Chris and Michael. Theoretically, it sounds like the Nightly will have partial feature code.
This is
Jason A.
Great question. So, kind of. So what the actual basis here is when we implement new features, we feature flag them, or we actually haven't yet had a feature of sizable nature that we have encoded in flag in the product. We've done it in some of our other things like our website and such. But the idea is that we can toggle that latent code on and off, and so the beta would have it on, or off, depending. And what we're going to provide you is the means in which you could toggle that feature, because we realized, as to your point, maybe it's incomplete in this regard. When we want you to see it, we'll toggle it on for you, but otherwise it would be latent in the code.
Yes, and again, coming back to the whole, hey, provide feedback, talk to us, work with us. Let's come work with you. If we know and we're working with you on site or something, and you have this very, very big problem that we happen to know we're working on a feature for, we might be able to toggle that feature flag for you specifically for testing.
Yeah.
To make sure we get it.
That's key. Yep.
So.
Hey, Chris and Michael, why was the decision made to completely deprecate the agent? And is it planned to be re-released at some point? Thanks, Tony Stark?
Yeah. Stark? Ooh, yeah.
The snake.
If it's Tony Stark, he already knows the answer to this. But yeah, so I'll jump in, and then probably Chris will have something here. But part of the reason to completely deprecate the agent, as we indicated in a lot of our correspondence and notification, is infrastructure, and which we've already kind of touched on, is we really didn't realize that our infrastructure really wasn't well geared for agent in the way that we designed it. And part of that was also how we designed it. We didn't realize the scoping and some of these things, because we unfortunately did the kind of standard development where we planned it all out and we then just implemented it, and with no feedback loops, and we didn't prototype and these sorts of things. And so, yeah, it kind of didn't work, unfortunately. But that's what we're changing. We're not going to do that again. We're going to prototype. We're going to get those data points, and we're also looking at how we're designing overall our infrastructure and our architecture of our software to address those issues. Do you want to jump in?
Sure. So the first thing that pops in my mind, I know it's speed round, but I'm going to talk. So this reminds me of a time when I like to go back, off-road driving in my truck that I don't have anymore. It makes me sad. But this truck, I found this course which was going to get me from point A to point B very quickly. And I thought, you know what? I want to go to point B very quickly. So I jumped on this course. And as I was driving, very quickly it became apparent that this road's very narrow. I have a big truck. And the roads was up at an angle like this. I couldn't do a U-turn. I couldn't even pop up out. And a little bit further in, I started to realize this is an ATV service trail that I was driving on. And I had already gone down some significant graded declines over some giant rocks. I couldn't back up over those and go backwards, so all I can do is press forward. And that's kind of how I feel about with this agent. We kind of went down this rabbit hole, and said, we're going to do this. It's fantastic. We want to get to point B. It's going to be great, without considering, the signage around.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're at.
I think this might win the record for the longest speed round question ever.
Of course.
And they lived happily ever after the end.
Oh, here we go again with speed round. Let's start the speed round over. Technically, the clock starts now. Dear Chris and Michael, what is the process happening when using the in-app update, download and install, versus running a manually downloaded MSI? Thanks, Jason A.
Hold on. What was the process happening when using the in-app update, download and install? So we're talking about like in the package library? I mean, Colby, chime in if you know what he's talking about.
No, they're talking about the check for update. Check for update?
Well, yeah, but it's up here because it's not showing there. So this here. Okay. Yes. So what was the question again? Sorry. Speed round. Woo! For the win.
Yeah, they want to know what happens when you click that download and install now button versus just downloading the exe from our website and running it manually.
It's essentially the same, except I believe that this one, now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know we had this, but we've changed up quite a bit of our update process, so this might not be the case anymore. But we had it so that if this already exists, locally within your central server setup, if you're using central server, it would actually pull locally rather than, over the internet. But other than that, I believe it should be the same, right?
Yeah, that's how client mode works. It first tries to copy it from the server, but on the server, it reaches out to our API and asks what's the current version, and if it's newer, it gets a link to the new version and downloads that.
Same thing, essentially.
Dear Chris and Michael and Colby, does the PDQ Deploy CLI support the use of the scan user specified in inventory? Thanks, Anonymous.
So is that anonymous? Is kind of ishy? Yeah, so if that is what your default set to, it should be using the default. Because I believe, because when you actually run a deployment, so let's say we deploy 7-zip here, it uses what was set last here. It should be using this setting, I believe, when you trigger this from the CLI. I can't do that live here because I don't have that set up. But
I don't think that's right. I don't think it's currently possible to use the scan user from the deploy command. I believe what you would have to do is set up a schedule with that option checked, and then kick off the schedule from the CLI.
I wonder. I kind of want to verify that now. I'm curious. We have mixed results here. I don't know, and Colby thinks he's right. He's going to prove me right, I promise.
I would err on the side of Colby, generally. If I was
I err on the side of Colby, let's be honest.
betting man.
Cool. Anything else?
Dear Chris and Michael, when will PDQ add deploy and inventory to the package library? Automatic updates. Anana blah blah blah.
Yes. I guess that's a good question. I mean, I'd be curious to know how many people are interested in something like that, and the reasons behind it, other than just I want my clients to stay up to date. But if you update the server, if you're on central server, they automatically will say, hey, I need to update and update. So use case, thoughts?
We've looked at it in the past, but due to if you're staying behind a version, then the latest version would be newer than yours, and it would cause we believe it would cause kind of weird issues and confusion. I did link a blog in the chat that I wrote a while ago about deploying, creating a package to deploy or update your client consoles.
Good, check it out.
And our final question of the day, dear Not Shane, what kind of beard oil do you use to tame that beast? Sincerely, Billy Drumrat.
I love the question. So I use the same beard oil as Shane does. He got me on it. It's argan all-in-one or something like that. Argan oil. Oh, no, one in only. That's it. That's right.
So I'm just going to throw out there, you're not building the case that you're not Shane here.
Sorry, but I didn't drink any whiskey today, so
it could have been an Irish coffee.
Oh yeah.
That's a good point.
That's great. But yeah, seriously, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into our development.
Yeah, and if you like this topic, again, let us know, and we'll keep providing that sort of content. And we're also surveying our customers as far as those topics go in our support tickets and such. So look for that.
All right. And with that, I'm Chris.
And I'm Michael.
PDQ.com.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks for joining our webcast today. Congratulations, Tony S. and Jason A., winners of PDQ swag. Send us your info at webcast@pdq.com. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you back here next week.